Chapter 3. Jack Makes a Promise. Staying true to Hiccup's word, they find Jack again once they're in the air, the burning remains of the ships far below them, everyone rising easily above the low-hanging storm clouds into the evening gloom. He comes dipping out of a higher cloud, touching down gently on Toothless's wing, the appendage barely dipping to his non-existent weight. The other dragons don't rear back at his presence, which isn't surprising. They had just been saved by him not an hour earlier. But they still shift slightly at his movements, twitchy. Their riders don't seem to fare any better, inching in closer to watch as Jack tows along Toothless's wing membrane. Jack, though, ignores the encroaching shadows of their forms, eyes fully trained on him. He's looking over Hiccup again, like he had back on the ship. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asks, tilting his head as he shifts his staff to his other hand. Toothless shakes his head, rolling his wings in a wave.
"Nothing too bad. We all got out okay,"
Hiccup says. He can't help but stare as Jack rolls along the movements of Toothless's wave, dancing over to the other wing, like he's underwater, shifting. Hiccup doesn't think he has enough skill or notebooks to ever fully capture Jack's fluid grace. "You guys were down there a while. Did anything else happen?" Jack asks as he settles.
"Yeah, Astrid managed to get some information out of them,"
he says, voice lowering. What that one hunter had spilled to them still echoes around in his head. He can't quite make sense of it yet, but whatever ideas he has leaves a bad feeling in his stomach. "Ah," Jack pushes off Toothless to drift just below Astrid. "Held an axe to their throat?" he asks, smirking. "No need for that," Astrid quips, leaning over the side to catch his eye. "Just tell Stormfly to eat them, and they spill everything." Stormfly chirps at the sound of her name, hopping in the air. Jack chuckles at the sight, and the dragon looks down, tilting her head from side to side, trying to get a good look at him. Hookfang glides in behind them. "What, so everybody knows him except me?" Jack turns his impish smile straight at Snotlout, who leans back a bit at the look. Right before he opens his mouth, though, Hiccup interrupts. He can sense that whatever was going to come out of Jack's mouth wasn't going to be helpful. He can feel himself start to come down off the adrenaline from their fight. He would really rather avoid another one.
"He was going to meet everyone this afternoon before our plans got scrapped. Astrid just ran into him early."
"Oh, well, would you like to join us for dinner, Lord Jack? I would love to ask you a few questions, if you wouldn't mind, of course."
Fishlegs jumps in, eyes sparkling. "Oh, we have questions too," Roughnut says. "A proposal, really," Toughnut chimes in. Jack shrugs. "Sure, I'll stay for dinner," he agrees easily. He floats up to Fishlegs, who squeaks slightly, crouching on his staff like a surfboard, arms draped over his knees. "What was that you called me?" he asks, voice raising slightly at the end.
Lord Jack?"
Fishlegs stammers.
"I'm sorry if that isn't correct, if there's something else you—"
"Lord Jack?" Jack says incredulously. "Is everyone calling me that?" Fishlegs nods, a little confused, and that's all it takes for Jack to burst into laughter, the force of it sending him spinning as he curls around his staff. Stray snowflakes ruffle from his clothes, dancing in circles around him. "That's amazing. Did you hear that, Hiccup? I'm a royal now," he calls.
"A royal pain in my ass, more like,"
Hiccup deadpans, grinning when Jack gasps, darting over to land in front of him on the saddle. He can hear Astrid snort at that one, and mentally calls it a win. Jack gives Toothless a pat when he lands, rubbing a question into his scales. When the dragon just huffs and tilts his wings to accommodate the new guest, Jack plops his full weight down. "Now that's not very becoming of a chief, my good Hiccup," he says, posh accent fully in place. Hiccup can hear the twins cackling behind them, and he rolls his eyes. "I should expect more respect towards your sovereign."
"Oh, my apologies, your almighty frostiness,"
Hiccup says, sarcasm dripping from his words. He leans forward to rest his elbow against the saddle.
"Lord of errant snowballs and crashing headfirst into rock pillars."
Hey, there was one time," Jack sputters, leaning forward until they were nearly nose to nose, grinning at each other. From this close, Hiccup can smell the crisp scent of pines and sharp winter air almost embedded into Jack's form. His eyes crinkle as he smiles, crow's feet pinching in a way that has Hiccup itching to smooth with his thumb. He knows he's quickly letting Jack become a distraction for him, but he can't quite bring himself to mind when he gets to see a smile like that.
"If you two are done down there," Astrid calls out, unamused, "we might want to talk about this new piece of information."
Hiccup sobers up immediately, leaning back. Jack frowns, eyes flickering between him and Astrid.
"What did you find out?"
he asked hesitantly.
"They're looking for death songs,"
Hiccup bites out, eyes narrowing, and he still doesn't know why. Astrid must hear the churning in his brain from his voice alone, because she takes over relaying their new information to Jack. When she goes into exactly why they would be captured for information on death songs, Jack holds up a hand.
"Wait, you guys met one? And raised one too?"
"Yeah, it was amazing,"
Fishlegs pipes in.
"It was huge and had these frills on its face, and they used music to communicate and also have the song that lures wild dragons into its trap, and then—"
"So, do you actually control the weather?"
Fishlegs asked, biting into a roasted fish. They had arrived back at the edge by nightfall. Everyone had dragged their feet into the main hut, unsaddling their dragons and leaving all the gear right there in the room. The dragons themselves curled right up by the entrances, cushioning the riders from the chill of the night air as they slumbered. Jack had hesitated, floating near the top of one of the doorways. When Hiccup had sent him a questioning glance, Jack just pointed over his shoulder and said,
"We can reschedule if you want. I don't want to keep you guys up."
Before Hiccup could answer, half the group had started protesting.
"Absolutely not. You're the most entertaining thing to happen to us in forever. I still need to know if you can dump snow on other people's houses,"
Toughnut had exclaimed, jumping against Fishlegs' shoulder as he pointed at Jack. Fishlegs himself was stumbling over his words, saying that if Jack wanted to leave, he was more than welcome, but they would be honored to have him here and for him to answer some of the curiosities, and
"Yeah, I'd say we're not going to bed any time soon,"
Hiccup had drawled. He shot Jack a smile before jerking his head slightly for him to come in. Now, settled around the table, half-heartedly cooking their meager dinner, everyone seems more than captivated by the newest guest.
"Sort of, I guess,"
Jack's voice answers, drifting down from the rafters. He had waved off an offered fish from Hiccup a few minutes ago, and now sat feet dangling from one of the support beams.
"What do you mean, sort of?"
Snotlout bites out, looking up suspiciously at Jack. Hiccup narrows his eyes at him from across the table, and Snotlout does a double take at the look.
"What? It's a valid question."
Jack snorts, leaning a bit over the railing.
"I don't really control it, just help move it to where it's supposed to go."
"Oh, so there's supposed to be 9 months of snow up here then?"
"Yeah, actually. There's been 9 months of snow here before I existed, and there will be 9 months of snow here long after I'm gone. I just help out when I can while I'm here."
"Fascinating,"
Fishlegs breathes, scribbling down more notes.
"And how old are you, if I may ask?"
Jack snickers, still not over Fishlegs' politeness.
"You may ask," he intones. "I'm 322, I think, if I've been keeping count right anyways."
This isn't news to Hiccup. He'd come to terms with Jack's age a while ago and put it in the same category as his shifting transient forms. It has a touch more sadness to it, though. Hiccup doesn't think much about Jack's age giving them an uneven playing field, but more how it doesn't. Jack is over 300 years old, and Hiccup still has more experience talking to people than he does. This, though, is definitely news to the rest of the group. There's a beat of silence around the table. Everyone is sending glances at Hiccup, which rude. There's a beat of silence around the table, and everyone is sending glances at Hiccup, which rude. He sees Astrid giving him a smug look and rolls his eyes. Vultures, the lot of them.
"Great questions, Fishlegs, but let's get into the important stuff,"
Toughnut says excitedly. Roughnut pulls out a scroll.
"We're wondering what your expertise is regarding general chaos. You see, we have an ongoing quota for the next few months or so, and your generous input could be invaluable to our bottom line."
"Quota?" Jack asks, head tilting. He floats down from the rafters, planting his staff on the ground behind Roughnut's chair, perching on top of the crook. He leans over them, eyes skimming the list. His face morphs into shock, then elated joy the further he reads, eyes brightening. "He's a genius," he breathes, leaning further over the crook. It has to be some sort of magic that the staff doesn't tip over the way he clings to it, letting one hand go to point down the list. "I can so do those. I probably shouldn't start errant blizzards in town too much, or else I might destroy your guy's crop supply, but I can freeze locks just fine." The twins look at each other as Jack goes on, having some sort of silent conversation, eyes sparkling. Hiccup watches from the other side of the table, head ducked while he chews on his fish. "I have a feeling I'm going to have a lot more headaches in my future," he grumbles, though the warmth in his voice softens any bite from the words. Astrid nods in agreement, holding back a yawn. Hiccup walks along the boardwalk towards his room, Jack trailing after him. He bounces from toe to toe in a little dance, frosting fractals spinning out from where his feet touch the ground. His staff lay lazy across his shoulders, arms slung over the wood. "Are you sure you don't want to rest here? We have a guest cabin, if you want privacy," Hiccup offers, following Jack as he twirls a lazy root around Hiccup's form. "No need. I need to head out anyways," Jack answers, stopping to tilt his head up towards the sky, eyes closing. "There's a few places that need some snow." He cocks his head, almost as if listening to the wind whisper in his ear. "Which it very well may be," Hiccup muses. "Do you ever rest?" he asks, more as a joke than anything. But the shrug Jack offers in response has him pausing. "Only if I drain my powers too much or get hurt. But throw me in a snowbank to sleep it off and I'm good as new." Hiccup frowns. "How often does that happen?" Jack's not facing him, too busy now hovering over Toothless, blowing cold wafts of air at his head, while the dragon twitches around and tries to swat him. "Not as much now," Jack says offhandedly, ducking from a tail swipe. Toothless manages to snag him right after, though, and pins him to the deck, blowing hot dragon breath right into his face. "Ah, Dig, save me!" Jack shrieks, laughing between gags, wiggling while he shoves his hand against Toothless's paw. Hiccup snorts, going to stand beside Toothless. He leans an elbow on the dragon's shoulder. "Hiccup, have you no mercy for your lord?" Hiccup guffaws at that and gives it an extra few seconds in retaliation. "All right, bud, I think you've made your point," he eventually says, patting Toothless aside. Toothless mumbles, narrowing his eyes at Jack, but does relent. He sits back and wiggles on his haunches, looking way too pleased with himself. Jack pops back up immediately, nose scrunched and clothes in disarray. "You, sir, are petty," he says, pointing a finger at the dragon. Hiccup turns Jack towards him, smoothing down his clothes and readjusting his cloak strap. "You're the one who provoked a 1,000-pound reptile," he says dryly. Once he's done, he places his hands on Jack's shoulders, looking down to meet his eyes. He doesn't ever think he'll get over the fact that a mythical being is shorter than him. By a good inch or so, too. Jack's eyes start from his hands up to his face, twitching nervously like he always does when Hiccup gets too close. He doesn't pull away, though. He just stands there, perfectly still, tense under Hiccup's hands. His toes curl and uncurl, and his hands are clenched around his staff, held against his chest like a lifeline. Hiccup doesn't even think he's breathing. It makes his chest clench. But Jack didn't say contact was bad, just unexpected. So he gives Jack's shoulders what he hopes is a comforting squeeze. "Look, I'm not really sure how your powers work, but if you need a place to rest, you can come by any time. No need to stuff yourself into snowbanks," he says. The hoarfrost blooms small and glistening across Jack's cheeks, and Hiccup still doesn't know what it means. Jack has something for every one of his emotions. His face may shut down, but he doesn't seem to even notice his magic mirroring his emotions far more obviously than his face ever could in the first place. Fat, happy snowflakes twirling around his head like wind chimes, ice shards sprouting small and almost painful looking from around his feet when he's frustrated. But the hoarfrost, that delicate but sharp-looking ice bursting over his skin, Hiccup hasn't figured out what that means yet. Ice is usually for stronger emotions, most of the time not pleasant, and it's only happened when Hiccup has pushed into Jack's personal bubble, intentional or not. He sighs inwardly and begins to draw his hands away. He just hopes he hasn't overwhelmed him too much. One of Jack's hands snaps up and grasps his wrist, holding him there, nearly making Hiccup jump. "Thanks, Hick," Jack says, small smile still curling. Hiccup gives a smile in return. One of Jack's thumbs strokes over his pulse point, trailing his veins with a gentle press, the cold seeping pleasantly under Hiccup's skin. Jack's eyes are half-lidded, and lazily following his own movements, smile looking almost forgotten on his face as he traces up Hiccup's arm. Hiccup holds his breath at the look. Jack's never done that before, initiate any type of physical connection in that way. He's tense enough as it is when Hiccup gets too close. So he just holds his breath and hopes Jack doesn't pull away. His hands must move because Jack pauses, eyes opening fully. He stays stock still for just a second, then takes a step back with a nervous laugh. "Well, I better get going. Got a few places snagging for some snow. I'll see you later." Then, before Hiccup can get a word in, he shoots up into the air, leaving Hiccup standing there, reeling. What was that? It's the end of another failed scouting mission, and everyone's lounging around the training square when Jack comes to visit after a few days away. He calls out a greeting as he starts to float towards the ground. Toothless perks up alongside everyone at the sound of Jack's voice, and Hiccup clocks his excited twitch immediately. He, however, isn't fast enough to stop him. The rest of the dragons sit up a bit straighter, more alert as they watch Jack drift down. Toothless, though, bounds over, jumps a good 10 feet into the air, and snags Jack around the middle in his jaws. A startled squeak from Jack can be heard, and then Toothless slams them both into the ground, rolling in a flurry of wings and tail. Fishlegs cries out, everyone jumping to their feet to rush over. Hiccup runs a hand down his face. Every damn time. He swears someday Toothless is going to actually hurt the poor man.
"Toothless, we talked about this, bud. You have to ask before you start doing that kind of stuff," he grumbles.
The rest of the group comes to a stop beside him, their dragon slipping a little closer as well, heads cocked curiously. "Your dragon just killed him, plucked him from the air like a dandelion, and this is how you react?" Snotlout cries, slack-jawed. "Is he okay?" Astrid asks, taking another step forward, eyeing the situation. Hiccup looks around at their alarmed faces and can't help but laugh. Even the twins seem shocked, which has some satisfaction swirling in his gut. Astrid gives him a glare, and he relents.
"He's fine. Toothless isn't hurting him."
Toothless, after some time, seemed to notice that Jack was a bit sturdier than the regular human. It was honestly a testament to the Night Fury's intelligence that he picked up on something like that in the first place, with how similar Jack looks to a normal Viking. But after observing him long enough, Toothless seemed to figure out that not only is Jack sturdier, but used to being tossed around by the wind to boot, and so has begun to take some real joy in wrestling with the spirit more roughly than he would with them. There's never any real viciousness with it. It's more of the way Toothless acts while playing with other dragons, just now with a small human he can bat around without fear of hurting it. Which is fine, even if it scared Hiccup half to death the first few times. But Toothless has begun to get bolder and has started forgetting to ask beforehand. It doesn't help that Jack just pops right back up afterwards with a quip and well-placed scratch on the dragon's chin. At this point, Hiccup is just immensely grateful for how easygoing Jack is, considering the number of times he's been bodied thus far. Speaking of, Toothless rolls over and stands up, revealing Jack's figure laying face down on the stone. Toothless warbles, shaking his head, before crouching down and crawling towards to shuffle a nose gently against his hair. Jack lifts his head. "Well, hello to you too," he deadpans. Hiccup strides forward, offering a hand to Jack while pointing the other at Toothless.
"We're having another talk about asking for consent, mister,"
he threatens, wagging his finger. Jack grasps his hand and uses it to bounce himself to his feet, kicking his staff up like a baton. "Nah, it's fine," Jack says, grinning. "Keeps me on my toes." Hiccup turns to Jack with a frown.
"You're not helping."
"How are your bones not broken?"
Snotout exclaims, waving his hands. "I've had worse," Jack shrugs, brushing off his cloak. "Anyways, what are you guys doing?"
"Oh, no. We're not just brushing past this, right?"
"Nothing much. We were just about to do some sparring," Astrid answers, smirking when Snotlout yells loudly behind her, throwing up his hands. Hiccup can see the way she's eyeing Jack, analyzing. There's some begrudging respect there, no doubt, from him brushing off a hit like that from Toothless. But Hiccup can also see a bit of wariness that hasn't quite yet left her expression around him. Snotlout grabs his sword and strides over by Astrid.
Fine, let's see how tough you really are then, Jack. You and me, let's go.
Astrid elbows him in the stomach.
You're supposed to be with Fishlegs. Yeah, no, I'm with Jack. Right, Jack?
He says, smirking right at him, eyebrows raised in a challenge. Jack comes to stand beside Hiccup.
Sure,
he says, cheerfully. Too cheerfully, in Hiccup's opinion. The excitement in the arena triples at that. Snotlout gets flanked by the twins, them starting to prepare him like it's a boxing match, giving wildly inaccurate advice while Snotlout jumps in place, loosening his muscles. Hiccup throws a side glance over towards Jack. He catches his eye and winks, bumping their hips. Hiccup's shoulders relax at the contact. He couldn't help but worry about Jack's sudden departure a few days ago. But Jack's posture isn't stiff, and Hiccup can't find any anxiety in his eyes. Just the usual mixture of glee and mischief.
You really don't have to,
he says, quiet enough only Jack can hear.
Say the word and we can move on to something else.
Jack's smile slips into something softer.
I know,
he says.
Might be fun, though.
Hiccup scoffs.
Yeah, just don't rile him up too much. I do have to live with him, you know.
And there's that elvish smile again, all sparkling teeth and crinkled cheeks that promise nothing but trouble. Maybe blaming the gods on all the misfortunes he stumbled into isn't exactly fair if he's getting sucked into a smile like that.
No promises,
Jack says before turning towards Astrid.
I've never sparred before. What do we do?
Jack proceeds to spend the next half an hour or so trouncing Snotlout. The twins are going crazy, looking like it's Snoggletalk morning. Fishlegs is scribbling furiously in his book, face a mix between disturbed and fascinated. Astrid looks on with a blank stare, eyes narrowed while she follows Jack's every move. She had explained to Jack that to win he needed to put Snotlout into a position where he would be dead if it were a real fight. Other than the blanket no broken bones or drawn blood, unless the person's okay with it, there weren't many other rules to go over. Jack had blanched a bit at the blood comment, and Snotlout smirked.
I'm okay with it, but do you even bleed, Jackie?
Hiccup had almost stepped in and called the whole thing off at that comment. Jack, though, held out an arm, stopping his advance. He then turned to Snotlout with a sharp smile and said,
I'll leave that up to you to find out. You know, if you can even land a hit.
The energy in the arena turned a bit headier after that. The first round, Snotlout had run forward with a war cry, only to fall flat on his face after Jack iced the ground under his feet. Jack floated over, pointed his staff at Snotlout's neck, and said,
I win,
with a smirk. The whole thing didn't last more than 5 seconds. Snotlout had turned a vicious shade of red before jumping to his feet and demanding another round. After that, it was round after round of Snotlout getting laid out before he even reached Jack. The wind would knock him over in a tangle of limbs, his boots would get frozen together, tripping him up, icicles would sprout out of the ground and grab him by the ankles, sending him sprawling. Jack had skated around Snotlout after that particular round, whistling a happy tune as he tapped Snotlout's head. Another cheerful, I win, chirped as he spun in tight circles around the makeshift ice rink. Snotlout growled when everyone snickered.
That's it, another round, this time without your stupid magic, he shouted.
Why not? Jack had shrugged before getting into position again. Snotlout had learned a lot since his first encounter, though, Hiccup must admit. When the first round of their no magic session started, Snotlout didn't rush in like before. He circled Jack slowly, hands clenched tight around his sword, Jack circling back on light feet. When he did go to rush in, though, Jack simply sidestepped him, twirled his staff, caught Snotlout's ankle with a crook, and yanked, sending him flat on his face for what had to be the dozenth time. Snotlout had stood up, just saying, again, in a much calmer voice than his earlier yelling before the reset. Now everyone watches immersed as the two circle each other once more. Snotlout moves slowly, half-crouched, footfall solid, and sword blade diagonally across his chest. Jack looks no different than he had at the beginning. Hiccup had been watching fascinated the whole time, never having seen Jack fight before. It was a style he had never witnessed, like water or air. Elegant. It's like he's dancing, Hiccup realizes. All the weight on the balls of his feet to the point where Hiccup can see how his heels drift between each step. Muscles loose, staff twirling lazily as he tosses in between his hands, as if the thought of dropping it never even crossed his mind. There's a pattern to his steps, though, sliding them until he's moving in a fluid circle. Snotlout makes a faint jab, and Jack doesn't stop his movements, just redirects them as he twirls out of the way. He doesn't jab back, though. He never makes the first move. This entire time he's just been reacting to what Snotlout's thrown at him. Snotlout must notice this too, because he doesn't move in like he had before. He mirrors Jack, jumping in to make a quick jab before retreating. Their circling tightens, distance closing. Every step forward Snotlout makes, Jack takes a half step back and to the side, never staying directly in Snotlout's line of sight. Snotlout begins to growl lowly at this. He turns to face Jack again, only for him to slip away to his periphery. "Are you just going to hide behind me this entire time like a coward, or are you going to fight?" he barks, hands clenching around his sword. Jack chitters a little laugh, the sound clinking around the arena, echoing in that way his voice seems to. Snotlout makes another jab, but Hiccup doesn't see, eyes glued to Jack as he twirls to the side, knocking the sword with his staff. He half expected Jack to spend the entire time running through quips faster than his mouth could keep up with, which he had at first with his powers. It was light-hearted to watch him dance around, cracking jokes, while freezing Snotlout's feet to the stone. Now, though, there's some calculation in Jack's eyes. He's silent, concentration solid behind the casual smile he has plastered onto his face. Some of that danger Hiccup saw in the forge is leaking through. He's lining something up, Hiccup just knows he is. Snotlout finally loses his patience and turns, stepping directly into Jack's space, throwing an elbow to his gut. Jack's eyes light up, smile turning satisfied. He was annoying Snotlout until he got impatient and made a mistake. Jack ducks under the elbow and twists to throw a kick at the exposed side. Snotlout turns and jabs his sword right at him. Jack doesn't stop, merely drives his whole body under the blade with the momentum and knocks Snotlout's legs with the kick instead. Snotlout goes down with an angry cry. He bucks his legs on the way down. They hit Jack straight in the gut, staggering him. Jack puffs out a breath, rubbing his stomach, slight annoyance flickering over his face. Then Snotlout is up again, charging straight at him. Sword and staff strike, locking. Snotlout leans his weight against their weapons, going to push Jack into the dirt. But Jack just hops a few steps away, staggering Snotlout from the force of his own shove. As he staggers, Jack tilts his staff diagonally. It slides right under Snotlout's arm, and he jerks it up in a circular motion. The wood twists around his wrists, forcing him to drop the sword. Then Jack keeps moving around Snotlout, staff dropping to hook around his legs, dropping him flat on his face once again. Snotlout goes to spring back to his feet, but gets pinned by the crook pressed against the back of his neck. "I win," Jack says, smirking. He hops into the air and drifts a few feet back. The peanut section erupts into cheers, the twins shaking each other in their excitement. Snotlout jumps to his feet with a frustrated cry, kicking his sword. It sparks as it skids to the edge of the arena. "Your stupid stick always trips me up. Who fights like that? Again! Lose the toothpick. Bet you can't fight without hiding behind that thing." He practically snarls, crouching into position. Jack leans against said stick, picking at his fingernails. "Thanks for the offer, Snotty, but I think I'm all tuckered out." "Bullshit. You're just scared. One more round, man to man." "Oh, I'm a man now? Before you were questioning if I even bleed." "Stop deflecting, Lord Jack." Jack stands up a bit straighter, some of the humor leaving his face. "I'm not losing the staff, Snotlout. We're done." Hiccup can see the hard line of Jack's face, posture tense, like he's being backed into a corner. He moves to step in right as Snotlout tries to dash forward and grab the staff. His hands land on Snotlout's shoulder, and he stumbles a bit before halting his advance. "Snotlout," he says sternly, "I think it's a good time to stop." Snotlout narrows his eyes and glares right at Hiccup. Hiccup doesn't back down from the stare, just holds it with one of his own. They stay like that for a few seconds, and then Snotlout knocks his hands away with a huff, turning to stalk off. Probably going to mope somewhere. He never did take defeat gracefully. Hiccup just hopes he's calmed down enough by dinner time. Hiccup turns to Jack. He's clutching his staff to his chest like any one of them might try and snatch it next. He pauses a moment. It seems beyond how people would treat their weapons, favored or not. It's not like he's terrified to be without it. Hiccup takes a step forward, placing a careful hand on Jack's shoulder. He sighs inwardly in relief when Jack doesn't flinch. His grip on the staff even seems to loosen.
"How about we give you a proper tour of the island?"
Hiccup offers, looking over Jack's shoulder at everyone else, raising an eyebrow. Astrid shrugs, and the twins and Fishlegs perk up at the suggestion.
"That's a great idea. You never got one when we came in late last time,"
Fishlegs chirps, stepping forward.
"Only if I get to spar with him later,"
Astrid remarks, giving Jack a sharp smile.
"I've never seen that fighting style before."
Jack chuckles, posture relaxing again.
Trying to learn my weak points, Astrid. For shame.
Astrid snorts.
"Yeah, something like that."
"Where did you learn to do that?"
Roughnut asks.
Jack shrugs. "Practice. Enough beings try and kill you, I guess you pick up on some things."
"Cool."
"Oh, Hiccup, could I show Jack my Zen garden first? I just know it would look beautiful with some ice sculptures."
Jack looks at Hiccup with a raised eyebrow and a tilted smile. Hiccup rolls his eyes.
"Yeah, sure, Fishlegs. I do want him back at some point, though."
"Oh, Hiccup, I'll miss you too."
"I wouldn't go that far."
Jack barks a laugh, fat fluffy snowflakes twirling around their heads. He flicks a swash of snow at Hiccup's face before trotting off with Fishlegs. Fishlegs visibly brightens when Jack asks what exactly a Zen garden is, and his babbling explanation trails behind them as they depart from view. The twins immediately hop on Barf and Belch to follow, and Astrid walks over to stand next to Hiccup.
"Well, he certainly knocked Snotlout's narcissism down a few pegs,"
she remarks, crossing her arms. Hiccup snores.
"Yeah, and he wasn't even trying until the end."
Astrid side-eyes him, smirking.
"Watching closely, were you?"
"Shut up."
"I was right about him being older. Never knew you were into that."
"Astrid,"
she chuckles.
All right, dropping it. I do want to spar with him, though. I'm betting we're not the only ones surprised by those moves. Could be an advantage to learn."
Hiccup hums to that, rubbing his chin. A lot of his movements probably wouldn't translate as gracefully over to the rest of them. Jack was like a leaf in the wind, and Hiccup had no doubt, even when he wasn't visibly using his magic, that it still influenced the fight. The very fact that Jack could switch forms like water to ice, something as simple as his weight distribution becoming fluid, made his fighting style unique. But his redirects, the way he turned Snotlout's own brute force against him, that might be useful to learn. Hiccup may even become decent in combat with something like that under his belt, with him being dubbed the village fishbone and all that. Though the nickname has much more warmth and less bite than it used to. Something else to ponder, he supposes. Hiccup cracks a smile. Jack always left him with something new to think about, it seems. He ends up not seeing Jack until dinner. It's worth his absence to see that bright smile bursting from his face, though. He spends nearly the entire meal sat on the tabletop, gesturing wildly with his hands, staff tucked into an armpit, while he regales Hiccup of everything he saw. He sat to Hiccup's right, one leg tucked under him, while the other dangles, close enough that Hiccup needs to move his cloak out of the way so it isn't laying over his dinner. He doesn't mind that he already knows everything Jack's telling him, because it may as well be a whole new island with the enthusiasm and life that's bursting out of every word. His excitement bleeds over to everyone at the table, them jumping in to add comments every now and then. His babbling descriptions are borderline poetry, and it even has Astrid puffing out her chest in pride when he describes her hut. Apparently at some point Snotlout had even slinked back and angrily stolen Jack to show him his hut when he learned that they were doing a tour without him.
"I like the big S. Really pulls the decor together,"
Jack says, glancing at Snotlout with a lopsided smile. Snotlout scoffs, leaning back in his seat across his arms.
"Of course it does. I planned it that way."
Jack gives Hiccup a quick wink as he continues talking. It seems an olive branch of sorts has been extended. Hiccup sends Jack a relieved smile, tapping his knee in acknowledgement before taking another bite of his mutton. Jack's fingers jitter across his staff, and he taps Hiccup's leg with his foot while he inclines his head towards Fishlegs, asking him something about one of the books he had shown the spirit. He waved off food again, and Hiccup frowns into his mutton, wondering if he's been filling himself on Burke's sweets.
"You sure you don't want anything? We have plenty."
he offers again, waving his mutton leg around slightly. Jack pauses. No, I'm good. Honest. If you don't mind me asking, do you need to eat? Fishlegs pipes up, face open in curiosity. Jack shrugs. No, not really. I don't get hungry or anything. So you just eat Burke's stuff to satisfy your sweet tooth, then? Astrid shoots out, raising an eyebrow. Jack chuckles. Can you blame me? I've never tasted anything so nice. There isn't anything sweet down south? Jack snorts. If there is, it's all rotten by the time I can get down there. There's some frozen berries and stuff, but most of what I can find is bitter. What are you talking about? Astrid asks, cocking an eyebrow. What? That's all people eat down there? Jack narrows his eyes, looking mildly confused as he twists to face Astrid properly. No, they have stuff like up here, pies and stews and whatever else you guys leave on the windowsills to cool. So, you've had southern pie? No, I just said I haven't. Jack deadpans, twitching in what looks like the beginnings of annoyance. They start to bicker in the background, but it gets drowned out in Hiccup's head. He stopped eating, staring at the table. Oh, no one can see him down south, and Burke seems to be the first place that's been semi-friendly towards the spirit. Hiccup looks over at Jack, whose face is scrunched in irritation, trying to say something to Astrid, who looks just as annoyed. He's a winter spirit. No matter how mischievous he can be, Hiccup doubts he would steal from a household that may need the food. He thinks back to the second ever meeting at the shrine. Was that the first time Jack's tasted something other than bitter berries? He shakes himself out of his thoughts. Jack is curled in on himself now, and Astrid no longer looks angry. In fact, her face is doing that spasm it does when she's concerned and trying to twist herself out of her typical scowl. She must have come to a similar conclusion then. The concerned looks seem to be affecting Jack more than the angry ones. Hiccup can see him start to move his leg out from where it's tucked, mouth opening to toss out some quick goodbye before he runs for the hills again. Hiccup leans against Jack's leg, stopping him. Well, have you ever had mutton before? Don't knock it till you try it, he says casually, laying an arm across his lap, holding up one of his untouched pieces. Jack darts a look around, and Hiccup glares until everyone stops staring. I don't want to take it if you guys need... I'm full anyways. Go ahead. Hiccup cuts him off, shoving the food into Jack's hand. He squeezes his leg before leaning back again, and some tension seeps out of Jack's shoulders. He brings the mutton up to his mouth with a mumbled thanks. The table hangs in an awkward after-silence until it's cut off by Jack's loud gasp. This is so good. The conversation flows easy again for the rest of dinner. So, just to reiterate, we're all in agreement.
Yeah. We'll keep our mouths shut, as long as we can still drench people in snow with him.
Toughnut mumbles, waving Hiccup off. The morning sun is just beginning to peek over the horizon. Hiccup tightens down his last strap, petting Toothless in question. The dragon stands and wiggles around with the packs in place, barking approval over to Hiccup, who gives him a thumbs up. They're expected back by tonight, and still haven't found anything helpful about the hunter presence in the area. Ever since the failed kidnapping on part of the new group, they have backed off their presence almost entirely. There was one other kidnapping attempt, but the pattern of their attacks was less forceful than the first encounter. It seems that they know the riders were now aware of their general plan and have decided to back off to pointed hit-and-runs with them in response. Hiccup doesn't know if this is a tell about the personality of the still mysterious ringleader, or if it may tip their hand on having found other information on death songs since the first attack. Either option leaves him nervous. No matter what it is, they still only know bits and pieces about this new group. With how slippery they're being, it doesn't seem like they're going anywhere anytime soon. Hiccup already has proposals drafted up to present to Stoic for further expeditions, but until then they'll be leaving the waters unsupervised once again. It leaves a bad feeling in Hiccup's stomach. He still doesn't even know what they want with death songs, and that in and of itself has given him multiple sleepless nights. It's almost light-hearted in comparison to discuss their other topic at hand, that being the resident winter spirit. That morning, as everyone stood in their main area strapping their stuff down for the return flight, Hiccup had broached the subject of Jack, specifically on Jack's presence in Burke. They're already nervous enough with him as it is. I don't think it's time yet to have him wandering around in plain sight."
"I agree," Astrid had said. "We should keep everything quiet until they get more used to the idea."
"Yeah, get them used to the idea, or get Jack used to the idea? He's more skittish than some of the feral cats hiding around the outskirts of town."
Snot-Loud had scoffed, snorting to himself.
"Which is why we shouldn't go around talking about him in public. Everyone's just getting used to the children's claim of seeing him. We shouldn't rush things and have axes pointed to his throat,"
Hiccup stressed.
"We can still see him, though, right?" Fishlegs had asked, wringing his hands. "I promised I would lend him some books on Berg's native dragons."
Snot-Loud barked a laugh.
"I thought we wanted him to come back, not send him running from boredom."
"Just because you don't enjoy the finer points of literature doesn't mean Jack shares your sentiments. I'll have you know he was quite excited about seeing them."
Fishlegs sniffed, sending a glare while he reshuffled some rocks in his pack.
"Yes, he'll still come visit, Fishlegs,"
Hiccup had said, turning towards the rider.
"It just may not be as openly as he has over here."
"Are you going to hog him like over here, too?"
Ruffnut had asked, snickering.
"What?"
Hiccup turned towards her, raising an eyebrow. Toughnut rolled his eyes, leaning an elbow on Belch's head.
"What do you mean, what? You're dragging him away every other minute for something or another."
"Not that he seems to mind," Ruffnut murmured out of the corner of her mouth. Toughnut had cackled as they fist-pumped. Snot-Loud and even Astrid snorted at that. Hiccup had looked around, a little bit betrayed.
"All right, I'm just going to pretend I didn't hear that,"
he grumbled, turning back around to Toothless. They in the air by mid-morning and back home by dinner-time. Hiccup spends the entire meal needling his father until Stoic finally agrees to a meeting the next morning. He sits in his room that night, rearranging his papers, rewording his plan, and remeasuring his maps. He just needs to get approved before they get their death song, if they haven't already. Jack finds him 4 hours to the east of Berg that next day, chucking pebbles off a spiraling isle, waves slashing into the rock face. Toothless lays behind him, enough pressure against his back for comfort, but wisely out of the way of his angry mumbling and general flailing. It's just all so stupid. He knows there's an indent in the snow from where he's been pacing. Toothless had just planted his ear flaps flat against his head and kept them there for the whole duration of his garbled yelling. He can't help it, though. What does his dad even expect of him? To just ignore the problem and assume it'll go away? His left leg aches horribly at the stump, and he yanks the prosthetic off after the throbbing gets to be too much, tossing it behind him with a scowl. Toothless watches it as it arcs and lands in the slush a few feet away, looking back at Hiccup unimpressed. Hiccup just frowns as he looks at his leg. The exposed skin is red and tender, hot to the touch. He winces as his fingers skim over the scarring. Great! Give him another migraine, and it'll be a goddamn trifecta. Why not? The gods certainly find some sort of humor in his misery. He snags another jagged rock, nearly cutting his hand open, when he hears footsteps behind him. Odin's above. If they followed him here, he's going to chew them a new one. Hiccup whirls around. "What?" he barks, nearly growling, teeth flashing at Stoic or Astrid or... It's Jack. He's in the middle of taking another tentative step forward. He pauses at the harshness of the words, eyes turning a bit startled. Hiccup's face goes slack with shock before pinching again. Just great. He turns back around with a groan, throwing the stone over the cliff before pulling his knees up and stuffing his face in them. He hears Jack approach. Toothless grumbles, then stands. Shucking him off for Jack to deal with, Hiccup thinks glumly. He can hear him stalking off somewhere in the thickets on the other side of the flat. Jack settles down next to him and playfully knocks their shoulders. "What's up, Buttercup?" he asks.
"Sorry,"
Hiccup mumbles, glaring down at the exposed rock between the space of his crossed arms. "Hey," Jack murmurs. He taps Hiccup's elbow and he slowly lifts his head. He looks at Jack, face miserable. Jack gives him a rueful smile. "What's wrong?" he asks, voice gentle. Hiccup twists back into a snarl. Jack quirks an eyebrow.
"He never listens,"
Hiccup explodes, all his frustrations bubbling back over.
"He denied any extra missions for the new hunter group, all because it's getting too close to devastating winter. He said he isn't approving us to go out back until the spring.
Hiccup makes a move to stand again, forgetting he took off his prosthetic. He ends up rocking backwards, nearly falling flat on his butt. Jack startles, reaching for him, but almost gets knocked as Hiccup begins gesturing angrily with his hands, not fazed at all by the stumble. Jack leans back and glances down at Hiccup's leg, hissing when he sees the stump.
He even tried to pull the whole, "We don't have enough resources for an expedition like that, Hiccup. We need to think of the village." Like we ever take anything. The Edge is basically self-sufficient. Then, when that didn't work, he just went back to barking about how I'm the future chief and can't be off somewhere during the most vulnerable time of the village.
Hiccup rocks forward, legs scraping against the ground. He winces, jerking the appendage back. That seems to shock him back into himself, and he just slumps forward, indignation draining from his shoulders. "How did this happen?" Jack asks, tapping his knee. Hiccup looks down at the blistered red stump with a wince.
"I may have overdone it after the meeting,"
he grumbles. Jack pauses, humming. Hiccup looks off to the side, staring glumly out at the ocean. "Can I try something?" Jack asks, hesitant. Hiccup nods his head, eyes trained on some seagulls floating over the waves. He doesn't know what he expects, but it isn't for Jack to gently lift his leg into his lap. He jerks when he feels cool hands soothe over the scarring, whipping his head around to stare. Jack pauses, and when Hiccup doesn't pull away, he continues to trace his hands over the red, angry skin. That feels heavenly. He has to physically stop himself from groaning. He can feel a soft chill steeping straight from Jack's fingertips into the blisters, and the aching subsides just a little. He does groan when Jack starts to massage the tense muscle, though, flopping onto his back, throwing an arm over his eyes. Jack's hands twitch. "Sorry, did I hurt you?" Jack asks.
No, it's okay. Skin's just sensitive there,"
Hiccup mumbles. Jack hums and continues in silence, thumbs lighting up as they continue to rub gentle circles. Hiccup closes his eyes, arms falling to his chest. He heaves out a sigh. Some irritation at everything still tightens itself around his head, but Jack's soothing motions have his heart rate lowering into something less likely to give him high blood pressure. He's grateful for the few minutes Jack's given him, but expects him to stop. He knows from experience that getting all the knots out of his leg can be hard on the thumbs. Jack just continues, though. After Hiccup's legs begin to relax in his lap, his voice pipes up, happily telling him about where he was while he was away. Hiccup listens in an abstract sort of way, Jack's voice washing over him like the sea waves. He hums at a few points, but mostly lays silent. Jack doesn't seem to mind, though, murmuring on in a melodic canter until Hiccup's legs against the ground, nearly slipping into a doze. "All right, looks a little better. You should get something on that, though," Jack eventually says. Hiccup comes back from the soft haze he had settled in. He hums, continuing to look up at the grey sky, thick clouds heavy with snow or hail swirling overhead. It's always either one or the other. "He might be worried," he hears. Hiccup furrows his brows, pulling his leg back as he sits up.
"Worried? We do dangerous stuff all the time."
Hiccup bites his bottom lip, pulling his staff into his lap to thumb over the wood. "Hiccup, devastating winter is—"
"Oh, not you too."
Hiccup groans, going to flop back onto the ground. Jack snatches his hand, jerking him upright. "Hiccup, please let me finish," he says. His eyes are sharp, determined, and trained entirely on him. There's a stoniness to his face that brings out the jagged lines of his slim frame. Hiccup clicks his mouth shut. Jack puffs out a breath. "Devastating winter isn't me, Hiccup," he says, eyes shimmering and earnest, almost begging. "I'm not the only winter being out there, you know that. The rest of them, though, they see humans as prey. They thrive off the long, hungry nights and deadly chills. I've never seen them more active than during your devastating winter. I couldn't stop the season if I tried. It's their hunting season, Hiccup. They go into a frenzy. Cannibalistic, too. I've had packs hunt me down for days at a time." Jack sighs, breaking eye contact, looking down at his lap. "Maybe it isn't all about the village. Maybe
He doesn't want you to go off somewhere and have blizzards or frozen seas stop him from following.
Hiccup flips his hand over and interlocks their fingers.
It'll take more than some ice and snow to get me.
Jack chuckles slowly.
I know. It's not the blizzards I'm worried about. It's what could be in them.
Well, I found you in one, didn't I?
Hiccup says, peering up, crooked smile planted on his face. Jack snorts, eyes softening. Hiccup looks down at their interlocked hands, frowning. His dad has never been one to share his feelings openly, worry or otherwise. And Jack looks worn down. Hiccup wonders about the fear that could come from being pursued for days on end by the beasts in Burke's tales. The ones that devour prey alive, the ones whose eyes glow eerily in the middle of winter storms. Hiccup wonders what else he's seen, what else is out there that isn't written down. It's getting harder to stay angry when he can see the worry behind Stoic's words now, the same worry reflected in Jack's.
I guess I could,
he starts to say, voice resigned.
I'm not saying you shouldn't go,
Jack interrupts, looking back up at him, crooked smile of his own flashing.
What?
Hiccup, if this means that much to you, then go. I'm all for a little rule-breaking.
Hiccup snorts at that, and Jack's smiles turn triumphant before sobering again.
I just want to know that you'll call me if you need help. If you're where people can't reach you, like back on that ship.
He lets go of Hiccup's hand, leaning forward, eyes boring into Hiccup's own. Snowflake pupils crystallizing into hardened ice.
If you need me, call my name to the winds, and they will take me to you. I don't care what it's for. I don't care if it's to help make a snowball. Call on me, and no matter where you are, I will come.
Hiccup stares at Jack, mouth hanging slightly open. The intensity there, the way he can feel the words ring out in the winds around them like a declaration. How they swirl through his hair in response. The way Jack looks right now, framed over the sea. Hiccup's cloak and Burke's jewels glinting from the sunlight, hair loose and waving like meadow grass.
Only if you promise the same,
he eventually breathes. Jack leans back a few inches, face scrunching in confusion.
What?
Hiccup doesn't know where he gets the confidence, but he reaches forward and cups Jack's jaw in his hand. Jack stills, eyes widening.
Only if you promise the same,
Hiccup repeats, stronger this time.
You're not alone anymore. If you need me, need us, we will answer. Send your winds to us, and we will come.
Jack stares, stunned. Hoarfrost, fluffy like the tendrils left on the sheep fences in early morning, blossoms across his cheeks. Hiccup runs his thumb over his skin, catching the trail. The frost flakes off in delicate clouds, edges soft and white. It hits Hiccup all at once. He's blushing.
Okay,
Jack whispers, voice rough. Hiccup's eyes snap back to his, and he didn't even notice when they had begun to wander over his face. He smiles, teeth catching on his lips and cheeks caught under the crease of his nose. It was never a bad thing at all. It's just his way of blushing. Hiccup's mind wanders back to Roughnut's throwaway comment, and his heart buzzes in maybes. He lets out a laugh and knocks their foreheads together. Jack curls a hand around his wrist, smile blooming.
Okay,
Hiccup agrees, eyes bright.